individuals who have Christmas cheer down to an art. They're the residents of Silvertown West Village, Greg and Susan Wilson, and they're also known to those of us on Christmas Lane as the captains of our street. So how about a warm welcome from the Kiwanis for Greg and Susan Wilson.
Tell them about that Christmas cheer. Huh? Tell them about that Christmas cheer. Yeah.
What an honor to be here amongst friends and to meet the new people I've met and are yet to meet. Look forward to that. Now, he introduced Susan is coming up. I don't think she's going to come up. She's my timekeeper. She made me these bullet points, thank goodness. Wilson's on walk to digress from time to time. And we'll just try to keep it going. There are many points on this little notepad that I have here that I could take off and do a whole thing on, because Christmas Lane has been around for a good long while for us folks in Thomaston. And in fact, I can't remember a Christmas not looking in the spotlights. But it all started with my dad. We're not at the house right now, so I used to call him Dad or Daddy when we were at the house. Many of y'all knew George Wilson. Many of you grew up in his program or knew about his program out in Silvertown. He was our recreation director and scoutmaster and coach, and you name it, we called him Coach. And that's what I'll be calling him a lot today, because outside 268 R Street, that's what I always called him, because I was just one of the kids. Coach fought World War II and became close friends with a fairly wealthy family, the Kites in Swindon, England. And he spent weekends with them. And he noticed something that people in England enjoyed doing at Christmas time. And he was there for 2 Christmases in England before he went to France. They put holly around the door. Now they put lights around the holly with the holly around the door. However, the only time they could burn the lights was in the daytime. Blackout at night. They couldn't do that. But he said, I'm taking that home with me. So I remember 4 years old living on Goodrich Avenue. I think it was probably the first time he ever lit our door. I had never seen, I don't guess, I was 4. But he would take magnolia limbs and line the door and put Christmas lights on. People come from everywhere to see that. He would do it to both sets of grandparents' doors, and people would come from everywhere to see those. And then other folks started doing it. Well, if anybody who knew Coach Wilson knew that he had a fertile mind, and he was always thinking about what's the next big thing. The next big thing came in the form of a Coca-Cola Santa. Now, a lot of you people are going to remember this Santa Claus. It was his original Santa. We still lived on Goodrich Avenue. They gave him a poster. Some of y'all remember the big old poster of Santa standing up here like this with a Coke.
Yes.
Well, he took the poster, I think Lamar White gave it to him at the Coca-Cola plant. And he took it and took shellac, put it on the plywood, pasted it down, shellacked over it, cut it out, stuck it on our chimney, put one single spotlight on it. People came from everywhere. Not long thereafter, we moved, when I was, I guess, 6. We moved from Goodrich Avenue to where Susan and I still live today. Didn't think we'd end up there, but that's another story. Anyway, that's where we live, because we cannot leave there, because if we do, my dad would haunt me to my dying day. It is just required that we be there. And anyway, his mind started working. And that summer, he had this idea, and he got some plywood, real thin stuff, marine plywood, good stuff. And he was a pretty good artist, so he started drawing out these elves. You ride by the yard, you'll still see those elves. They're 59 years old this year. Some of them not so much, because some people would leave the community and they would leave the elves with him. So you got a diverse group of elves in our yard, I have to tell you. but some of them are indeed, and we have names for them sometimes. They're 59 years old. But he started with Candyland, a very small rendition of what it is today. Gee, I forgot to even look down at my notes. How about that? But he started with Candyland. He did Candyland 2 or 3 years and grew a little bit. Had this idea where he would take this, had a big elm tree in the yard. It was not killed by Dutch elm disease. He would wrap that thing with oilcloth, red and white oilcloth, out the limbs, the whole thing. Take big cardboard things from the mill he'd get, they were cores, and paint them like candy canes, hang them in that tree. Some of y'all remember those. I guarantee you do. And then finally Dutch elm got the tree, and so he had to come up with another idea. Let's move on to some other things. So that was in 1954 when he started that. Soon other yards jumped in. Ralph Underwood lived next door. Then later on he moved to Taylor County, became a state representative. And the next year he wanted something, which came a whole new way of doing things. He found some figures in coloring books, and he said, George, he said, can you reproduce these for us? Yes, I think I got the right thing. He goes back to Martha Mill, gets a opaque projector. We get out in the yard one night, stand up plywood, put the page from the coloring book under there, project it onto the screen, take some boot black, cut him out, paint him, got it. And many of the elves on displays on the street are done that way. You can actually do it with a transparency projector now. Then right after that, Harvey Simmons across the street started putting up things. Bill Maddox, actually one year Dad put up a little town of Bethlehem thing. He only did it for 1 year, and then Bill Maddox took that one and went back to Candy. Dad went back to Candyland. So we had Dewey Driver was one of the first people on the street to put a decoration up. His original is still there. If you ride by, you'll see the Looney Tunes with Bugs Bunny. And they used to have Wile E. Coyote. I'm not sure if they still do or not. Do you remember, Susan? They still have Wile E. Coyote? Tasmanian Devil at one time was stolen. And then one time somebody stole the Bugs Bunny, but some of the kids in the neighborhood told us about it, and we waylaid them, and we got Bugs Bunny back. So he's standing tall down in the driver's yard today. So then in about 1971, 72, I guess it's 72, my Uncle Merle Wilson put up the Peanuts. So that's his original. We have some old things over there as far as being tradition on Christmas Lane. Now, it wasn't always a formalized thing. In 1971, Carleen Maddox and Earlene Simmons, Bill Maddox and Harvey's wives, were having coffee one day. The displays were up, and it came to them, we should formalize this thing, make a big deal out of it. And so they came to Coach and said, George, we want you to do this. Imagine that. And by the way, they had my mother with them at the time, so that pretty much ensured that was going to happen. And they said, we want to make this a formal thing. And he thought, why hadn't I thought of that? And so they did. And we started putting together with the neighbors a whole idea of Christmas Lane. And one of the things they came up with was the line of Christmas trees. And Wilson and Simmons cut and run service. Now what that was, no relation to Dr. Simmons over here. It was Harvey Simmons. And Dad could pretty much leave the mill when he needed to. Harvey worked 4 to 12. So they would get in Harvey's truck and ride out through the county and find, you've seen these little cedar trees like this growing on the fence line where the birds had planted them. And they would run, they would take their loppers, they'd jump out of the car, snap them, throw them back in the truck, and go and just drop them off at people's houses. Then everybody would put them on the street, light them up, so when you rode down that street, it was like you were riding down through a lane of Christmas trees, and the displays were behind. So they did that, and that precipitated Light Up Night. Light Up Night is a big deal for us. It's like I just mentioned a while ago, it's big time, small town. And again, I'm gonna digress for a second. Aren't we lucky to live in a small town?
Mm-hmm.
I feel sorry for folks who do not live in small towns. And this is a particularly nice one. This might not be heaven, but you can see it from here. And but we always do a light up luncheon. We do this now on the first, it's right after the Georgia-Florida game because we got to be, you know, hemming and hawing over that either way. But it's the first Sunday in November. We all meet, and it's a covered dish thing. We always have a good time. Do a little planning. Very little planning now because we've got it down to such a science that we pretty much know what we're going to do. And so then on light up day, everybody puts up their own display. Then later on, if we have some elderly folks and sick folks we need to help with, we do that. Then on light up morning, we have a breakfast at 9 o'clock. Have to get it pretty quick because the good folks from the city come and pick up our leaves. We have to get the leaves out. We have very good city services, by the way, and I will get to that in a minute. The breakfast and the luncheons have moved from time to time. The breakfast has been in the Silvertown Scout Hall before, the Crowder's Garage, and now it's at the home of John and Donna Off. Final touches on light up day. Get those leaves out of the yard. They have to be gone by noon. And you'll see everybody, and lo and behold, if you do not like the sound of a two-stroke engine, our street is not the place to be. And I'll be honest, I don't like it. Then, as I said, we help our neighbors get things up that they're running behind on. We have acquired extra lights, extra cords and stuff, so that we can help them. Then you got the final check on the lights. We usually check ours. Ours is pretty complicated, actually, and we check ours the night before, but helping people get lights up. And then we watched the weather radar. And we watched it with great attention this past time. The good Lord was happy. I'm thankful to the good Lord. We're happy that the good Lord granted us a window where Santa could come and do his Santa thing along with Mrs. Claus. That's been a new touch he's added. He's been bringing her lately. And they spend a lot of time with these kids, and they love these kids. And to hear Santa and Mrs. Claus talk about the kids is amazing itself. Santa's arrival, that has been an adventure the whole time. Santa used to come in police cars. Then Coach got this idea. Police cars aren't red. How about a fire truck? So Santa started coming on a fire truck. That's very impressive. Then we had people wanting to help, which brings on Jack Butler. Some of you all remember Jack Butler when he's still around, but his steam tractor is not. You remember the big old steam tractors?
Right.
He had that thing. And you could hear him over by the ballpark getting that thing, you hear chugga, chugga, chugga. And then here it clankety, clankety, clank. It sounded like a World War I tank coming up the street. And he'd have to run it up and he'd turn around and run it back, make sure everything was all right. It was a lot of fun. It was very impressive. He put lights on it. Then there's this one night, you know, we always get Santa's helpers to come to play the part of Santa Claus, because Santa's too busy at that time of the year. And this particular helper was riding on the steam tractor. And it seems that Jack's buddy, Luke Ellington, y'all don't know Luke now, do you? He was asked to flip this switch. Well, he flipped the wrong switch and poured water in on the coals. He poured water in on the coals. All of a sudden, hot cinders, wet, hot cinders coming out of the smokestack onto Santa Claus. Needless to say, we had to get another helper the next year and another Santa Claus suit. And Dad had to have his car painted. He was following along behind. We have had some adventures. The next thing we had was, one of my most impressive things was Dr. Ken Morgan. Those beautiful Percheron horses he has, draft horses, on that big wagon. And on top of the wagon was like a slate, had a Coca-Cola thing on the side. Sun would ride it on it. He put lights on it. It was gorgeous to hear those horses coming up the wagon. And he would actually go to Richmond Hill, Georgia. If any of y'all know where that is, it's just below Savannah. He would leave that morning and drive to Richmond Hill. He had an 18-wheeler for those horses, and do a parade there for the Boy Scouts. And then he had to hustle back over here to get those horses ready. Then he'd have to take them down to the far end of the street and then come back. One year he called me and said he wouldn't be able to do it anymore. Liability issues, and I can understand that totally. And he hated it. He didn't get to do it anymore, and he did too. He was a good man. And now we have Mr. Jeff Kennedy. Jeff lives out in Crest. He knows everything there is to know about tractors. And he has a friend with an old antique John Deere that's restored and fixed up. Jeff brings Santa in and Mrs. Claus on a hayride full of kids. And so far, that has been a really nice thing for us. And we hope sometime that you all will be there. Oh, I forgot. Coach used to have a Triumph TR6 sports car that he and I and Susan loved to drive. And by the way, if we were going to take a racing, I'd let her be the driver because she was good with it. But one year Santa sat on the back of that. So we got Santa in here. Well, we've always had music here of late until this year, and there was a conflict of schedule. We've had the Thomaston Brass Ensemble for the last several years, and Danny Smith assures me that they will be back next year to welcome Santa. One thing Dad used to do was gather all the kids at the bottom of our end of our street, and as Santa was coming up, he would walk ahead of Santa and light railroad flares in front of all the houses, just as a touch, and he would gather kids up along the way. And then after light up, we have parties. And at every house, you go from house to house, getting cookies, cider, whatever people have. We just have a really good time. It's a big thing for a small town, for our part of the small town anyway. Now, let's talk about some myths and some facts. There is a myth out there that if you move to our street, you must participate in Christmas Lane. That is a myth. Hey, look, we're freedom-oriented, folks, while we still can be. And we're going to be that way. If you don't want to light up, fine. That's the way you want to do it. A lot of times we have extra displays. We will offer them. And in a couple of cases this year, we put up extra displays and folks. They were real appreciative. Sometimes in no thanks, I don't think we want to participate. Fine. Your option. Also, did you all know we get a break every December from the city electric department?
Yeah, but don't talk about that.
No, we don't. Nor do we ask for one. People say, well, the city ought to help y'all out. No, 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 no. That is not for the taxpayers of Thomaston, Georgia to deal with. We do this because we want to and we love to. And I'm not a big one to say we're giving back, because nobody gives us anything. Ain't we y'all either, for that matter. So we just do it because we like to. Did you know that Coach Wilson got this started because Martha Mill paid him to do that? And they bought all that lumber? And they bought all that wiring and lights? Didn't happen. That is a myth. He did every bit of it himself. Now, I will tell you one thing. He could muster a small army of young men and women when he came time to put stuff up. In fact, one year, George Hightower was sitting there, his sister came over, and was helping us get some stuff ready to go in the yard, and Dad's Christmas tree fell right on top of it. And I'll never forget that. She said, "You Tarzan, me Jane," and that was her name. And so it was hilarious. I guess you had to be there. But no, everything we did now, I will tell you this. Dad did have access to some of the carpenter shop tools. They would let him, when they weren't using them, do that. He was able to purchase wholesale some items from the shops there. But I, somewhere at the house in a notebook, I still have those invoices where he purchased them from Martha Mill. And he was able to go through the scrap bins and get things from there. Otherwise, everything else was bought. He had a lot of different displays. One year, I got to tell you about this. This is not on my notes. Again, digressing. Okay, she's telling me to go. He built a cabin in the front yard, complete with smoke coming out of the smokestack, with a Christmas tree in the window, and he lit it with black lights. The cabin was dark, but you could see where the logs were. Black lights. He had black light paint painted the elves, and it just glowed. Some of y'all remember that. People kept asking. It was hard to build. I helped him. Said, "When are you gonna knock that down? Put Candyland back up." You know, so we haven't done anything but Candyland since then. Anyway, another myth. Now then, facts. The community of Thomaston, Georgia. This is a real fact. They're so good to us. We try to make it as easy on the taxpayers as we can, but I will tell you the Thomaston Police Department are great at keeping our roads moving. They'll block off, make it one way on light up night. Lieutenant Walker, we're very fortunate to have him. He is a real superb individual, as is the whole force. They also help us at Halloween a lot. Halloween's a whole other deal. Rodney Daniel with the electric department. Now, he doesn't live on that street, and he doesn't do this officially, but he's kind of our unofficial electrician on the street, and he does a great job in the city electric department. Parks and Recreation, getting the parking ready and all down at the bottom, down below the Waller's house. Different community things. We're going to have carolers this year. Every now and then on Saturdays we have people serving hot chocolate, just all kinds of stuff. We appreciate this community. I could go on. Some of the facts and fictions regarding Christmas Lane, but some of y'all need to get back to work. Now I understand that you do, and I hope I haven't kept you too long because I am wanting to speak for a while. No, Wilson is not that way. We know, and I hope you do too, there's some time, the time will come to realize that Christmas Lane is a finite entity. There will come a time when it won't be there anymore. But no time soon, we hope. As long as we can, we will. So I'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas. Yes, I said it. Merry Christmas. And we hope to see you all on Christmas Lane this holiday season. Thank you.
Ray, thank you for sharing the history.